Hello and welcome to another episode of Drilling Deeper. Today we are out back behind the museum and we're going to talk about some of the fabulous resources. Lambton County is home to world-class beaches, rivers, lakes, streams and wetlands. But that being said, not everything out here is the great. We may be the envy of the world for our freshwater resources, but I'm here to tell you, don't drink the water. Not all the water here in Lambton County, particularly in Enniskillen Township, is safe to drink. This goes back to the early oil industry. We have a landscape that is part of a natural geologic phenomenon with oil seeps. So in the early 1800s, oil would naturally ooze up from the ground and leach into the Black and Bear Creek. This was not a particular problem prior to the 1850s because this low-level contamination was isolated to these locations. And the Great Enniskillen Swamp kind of contained that oil refuse. It was not until the petroleum industry got its start here in the 1850s, first with Charles Nelson Tripp's asphalt works, and then with James Miller Williams wells, where they started producing petroleum products and refining on a large scale for export and commercialization. These oil works and petroleum stills produced runoff that ran into the creeks and waterways, adding to some contamination. And by 1859, the change in the water landscape was much noticeable. This prevented people from accessing clean, fresh water needed for survival to drink, to wash, to water their animals, and water their gardens. People had to look at the environment that they were changing through their activities and re-examine what was going on. So how much oil was escaping these wells? According to geologist Alexander Witchell in the 1800s, they estimated about 5 million barrels ran off during the 1860s into the Black and Bear Creeks. This is a huge amount of oil. And everywhere within the township, there were contaminated wells and springs due to runoff or salt water inclusion into these wells or the streams. This meant that people had experienced detrimental effects to their health through stomach ailments, and they had to fight and invent new industries. One of those first new industries that people contemplated to deal with this radically changing environment were water cellars. Horse-drawn wagons would come around to the different houses and sell water for a penny a pail so that you would have fresh, clean water to drink. Most people in the oil springs area, particularly the men, just opted to drink more whiskey, which would have been clean and shipped in from other places. But this didn't work for everyone. And while everybody took some pride in making lots of money off this new industry, it did come with that caveat: you had to pay for the water. Necessities of life were in short supply. This all changed by 1896 when the community of Petrolia decided that enough was enough, that this pollution was so detrimental to their health that they needed to find new methods of bringing in fresh, clean water for the population. With all local wells somehow salted or infiltrated with petroleum products, they built a pipeline that traveled 20 kilometers from Brights Grove on the shores of Lake Huron into central Lambton to bring fresh, clean water. This is still used today, where people all throughout this community have water brought in from the fresh, clean Lake Huron water system, where it is filtered and distributed. Thank you for this little update. We'll be talking about more environmental concerns and the oil industry in the historical time period in other episodes.